If you really want to dominate the world, here's the truth. You don't need an army. You don't need billions in the bank. And you don't even need a title. You need silence, not weakness, not passivity. Real, calculated, intentional silence, because in a world where everyone is screaming to be heard, the most dangerous person in any room is the one who doesn't need to say a word, the one who observes, the one who calculates, the one who already knows more than everyone else. Carl Jung understood this. He didn't view silence as passive or soft. He saw it as a weapon, a tool for transformation, control, and domination. When used correctly, silence exposes others, builds you, and places you in a position of influence so strong, people will follow without you asking. Carl Jung wasn't here to make people feel good. He was here to rip the mask off the psyche and expose the raw truth underneath. He believed the conscious mind was just the surface. The real stuff, the power, the instincts, the intelligence, was buried in the unconscious. But here's the thing. You'll never hear it if you never shut up. Silence isn't empty. It's full of everything that matters. When you're silent, the unconscious rises. You begin to see clearly. You start feeling energy shifts. You catch details others miss. You become less reactive, more aware, and fully locked in. That is power, because now you're not just moving based on instinct, you're moving from presence, control, and awareness. You're operating on a higher frequency while the rest of the world drowns in noise. Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And silence is what opens that door inward. Now let's talk about the dark side, the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow is everything you repress. Your anger, your ambition, your selfishness, your shame. It's all the stuff society told you to bury. But here's the kicker. What you bury doesn't disappear. It grows. It controls you from behind the scenes. And most people are completely run by their shadow because they've never faced it. Because they've never spent enough time in silence to even notice it. Silence forces confrontation. It strips away the filters, the image, the lies you tell yourself. It reveals what you've been hiding from. And here's where it gets real. When you own your shadow, when you face the parts of yourself that scare you, you become unstoppable. You're no longer manipulated by guilt or fear. You're not caught in emotional loops. You become grounded, centered, and lethal. In silence, you don't just meet your shadow. You learn how to control it. And when you control your shadow, you control your life. You want to know who controls the room? It's not the person talking the most. It's the person talking the least, but thinking the deepest. Silence isn't absence. It's dominance. It forces others to show their hand. They reveal their intentions, their weaknesses, their desperation, all while you're sitting back, collecting data, adjusting your strategy. The business world is run by people who mastered this. CEOs, negotiators, lawyers. They know the one who speaks first in a negotiation often loses because silence creates pressure. People can't handle it. They start talking to fill the gap, and that's when they slip. It works in dating too, in relationships, in interviews, in leadership. Silence keeps people guessing. And when people don't know what you're thinking, they fear what you're capable of. The silent man is always underestimated until it's too late. Carl Jung wasn't the only one who understood this. Silence's power is ancient. It's philosophical. The Stoics built entire lives around silence. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome in stillness. He wrote in his journal, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That's what silence does. It lets you see the colors you're carrying. Seneca said, "It is better to be silent than to speak foolishly." And then there's Eastern philosophy. In the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." The samurai of Japan trained their minds as much as their blades. Why? Because war isn't won with noise. It's won with discipline, stillness, cold observation. Every great civilization, every legendary figure used silence not as escape, but as strategy. It's not passive, it's surgical. The world we live in is addicted to noise. Social media is an endless scream of opinions, insecurities, projections, and false flexes. People expose everything, their plans, their emotions, their thoughts. their every move. But here's the truth. The more you say, the less power you have. The louder you are, the more you're controlled by emotion, not intention. Carl Jung would look at today's world and see a massive crowd of people running from themselves, terrified of what silence might reveal. That's where you become different. Because if you can be still in a world that's addicted to movement, if you can be quiet in a world obsessed with noise, you become rare. And rare is powerful. Most people see silence as a hack, something to use in conversations or power plays, but that's shallow. Silence isn't a tactic, it's transformation. It's not what you do, it's who you become. Because the truth is, if you're using silence to manipulate, but your mind is still anxious, chaotic, or needy, you're not powerful. You're just quiet and weak. Carl Jung didn't teach silence to gain advantage over others. He taught it so you could gain power over yourself. Because until your internal world is mastered, your external power will always be fragile. Think of silence as a forge. Every moment of stillness is a fire that burns away distraction, fear, insecurity, and ego. What's left is the core. Clear thought, steady emotion, precise action. Silence turns you from reactive to strategic, from noisy to intentional, from follower to leader. And that's the real win. Because once your identity becomes rooted in silence, people don't just respect you, they depend on your presence to feel stable. Silence isn't just external, it's an internal battlefield. If your mind is noisy, silence is your enemy. That's why most people can't sit alone for more than 5 minutes, because the real war isn't out there, it's in here. Most people are busy avoiding themselves. They drown in content, conversations, distractions, anything but facing their inner world. But Carl Jung made it clear. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That means if you never sit with your fears, your rage, your envy, your ambition, they don't disappear. They just run the show behind the scenes. And that's what makes silence so powerful. It exposes the enemy within. And when you expose it, you can defeat it. If you want to be powerful, you must learn to sit with your shame without breaking. Learn to face your thoughts without numbing out. Learn to hear your internal chaos and choose stillness anyway. You don't have to tell the world what you're becoming. Let them see it when it's already too late. The loudest man in the room is often the weakest. The silent one, that's the threat nobody calculated for. Carl Jung called it integration. The moment your shadow and your conscious mind stop fighting each other and start working together, you don't need to chase attention. You don't even need to prove yourself. You move differently. You speak less, but when you do, it cuts. You lead without barking orders. You command without begging for it. Your energy speaks before your words ever could. This is how real domination happens. Not through announcements, not through theatrics, but through quiet, relentless growth. One day you show up and everything's different. You're undeniable. Not because you forced it, but because you became it in silence. And by the time they notice, you've already won.